Hey folks. So, we know that dragons once roamed the land of Hyrule, but was there more to it? Perhaps a dragon age? We know that the Zelda series has a long history of dragons across each game, from gods and deities to ferocious evils, serpents and winged beasts alike. Dragons are very present in Zelda games, and the Wilds era Kingdom of Hyrule shows us just how strong the presence of dragons once was many years ago. On top of the few sacred dragons we see travelling the land in the present day, we also find an abundance of dragon remains across the kingdom, and it's these very remains and their history that I want to focus on in today's video. The dragons themselves. I want to talk about the lore of Hyrule's Unseen Dragon Age. Be sure to go and grab yourself a snack and drink, folks. Subscribe if you're new around here for more fabulous Zelda content coming your way. Drop a cheeky wee like as well, and without further ado, let's get into this one. Let's start at a very relevant location, Dragonbone Mire, a boggy corner tucked away in the west of Hebra, not far from Rito Village. Here we can find the half-buried remains of what we can essentially confirm to be a dragon. The name of this location actually helps massively for identifying these remains, as we find identical skeletons in other parts of the kingdom, such as Lanayru in the Gerudo Desert, essentially confirming that they're all dragons of some kind. Additionally, we now find fully intact remains down in the depths, 3 large, presumably dragon remains found directly below the great Leviathan skeletons of the land. As to why they're found in these exact locations, I've done another separate video covering that if you'd like to check it out afterwards. I'll link it below. As for today's focus, dragons as a whole. It's clear that they once roamed free across the land. We find many remains across multiple regions. These weren't just one-off dragons such as the sacred dragons we can currently find, but only few can see, such as Link. These beasts were likely visible to all that lived alongside them. However, we can't put a timestamp on when exactly that time frame was. We can say for sure that it wasn't any time recent history, as we see back to prior to the Great Calamity, as well as even further back through the tapestry, and that doesn't depict any wild dragons, which doesn't rule them out per se, but it doesn't confirm them either. Given how we find many of these remains, I think it's fair to say they're pretty old, and I'm sure with how many are only partially uncovered that there are more where we cannot see. At some point in time, it seems as though dragons roamed free in the wild, nothing like we've seen in past games, with the odd dragon or two appearing as a god or boss. This was different. These dragons existed in great size. The sheer size of some of these rib cages really highlight just how big they were, such as the remains found in Lanayru, as do those found in the Gerudo Desert. They tower Link, and these are often found as just one section of the rib cage that made up the full body. For a full-length scale, the remains found in the depths give us a fascinating look at the honestly terrifying size these creatures would have been, not to mention their potentially intimidating horns, scales, and roars. These were wild dragons, much like the wildlife that roams Hyrule today, and their existence in time in the kingdom, likely before it was ever the Kingdom of Hyrule as it became in the far past, was one that shaped a lot of the old architecture and ruins we see today. Both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom highlighted the significance of dragons across history. The ancient Zonai people worshipped them highly. We see this in their architecture as well as customs. We know that they even had ways to become immortal dragons themselves, which, whilst not confirmed, it is speculated that the 3 sacred dragons we see across the Wilds era games, that they are in fact ancient Zonai that transformed into dragons. Regardless, the Zonai's relationship with dragons appeared as strong as the Hylians to the goddess Hylia. We don't know if the ancient Zonai lived alongside these creatures, but given how long ago it was that the Zonai people prospered, long before the glimpses of King Rauru and his sister Minoru we see, it's very possible that the Zonai people lived in the same time frame as these creatures, explaining their deep connections to the beasts. It's likely they had a far better understanding of them too, perhaps not domesticated, but able to live alongside without conflict. The Zonai were once people of the sky, a place which dragons could reach with ease. It's not far-fetched at all to say that they lived alongside them, as well as, you know, became them at times. The influence of this unseen Dragon Age is still very visible today, with all the dragon-inspired Zonai remains, but it's also present in more subtle ways. In recent times, we have seen these remains being used. Bokoblins and moblins have been seen to use weapons and shields made out of dragon bone. We can find items such as dragon bone boko clubs, bows and shields, crafty wee creations using this pristine dragon bone, presumably for added strength and power, as these tools are a step up from the standard Bokoblin equipment. This is by no means anything major, but it's very interesting to see how the remains find themselves in the modern day. It makes you wonder, did the likes of the Zonai and or anyone else who lived during the Dragon era also create dragon bone equipment? Maybe armor or furniture. It's entirely possible. If Bokoblins are smart enough to figure out that their bones make for good material, I'm sure those of the ancient times of the Dragon era could figure that out as well. Back at Dragonbone Mire, who exactly named it this? Nobody in either game explains, so it's really left down to our imaginations to fill that gap. Perhaps it has been known as this for hundreds of years. We'll never know for sure, but what we do know for sure is that it having this name confirms these remains, along with all the other identical remains as dragons. Where this gets really interesting is the remains we then find deep below Hyrule, in the depths. The previously mentioned dark skeleton remains appear to be full versions of the same remains we find on the surface, with intact skulls and near full-length skeletons. This really underlines just how grand an age this was. The Age of Dragons was made up of beasts at least this large, freely roaming the land and sky. Hundreds to thousands of them, and it might not have been just these slender dragons. We know that at some point in ancient history, the mighty Gleeok held its rightful place in nature. Large winged dragons that were quite territorial and very hostile of friend. Perhaps these beasts lived in the same age, or at least crossed lifetimes. There are also many different smaller dragons that we see in the flesh across other games in the Zelda timeline. More winged beasts such as Argorok in Twilight Princess, serpents such as Volvagia in Ocarina of Time. Then there's Aquamentus, Valoo, Gleerock, and many more. But they all appear in their own individual time as lonesome dragons. Perhaps in the Unseen Dragon Age, these creatures were also present to some degree. Hyrule's Unseen Dragon Age is one of these things about the last two Zelda games that really interests me. It's never something that's talked about in great detail, or even really at all. I get that the highlight is on the modern day dragons and the Zonai turning into dragons. But the wild dragons, all of these remains, aren't really talked about. It's not highlighting past dragons we've seen, but rather a new kind that we haven't. It's extremely present in the world and environment, and as far as environmental storytelling goes, this is one of the greatest examples. At base value, the developers just laid some remains around the world to look cool, and let us know that dragons once lived, which on its own is really cool. But what this really becomes when you connect all the dragon lore of the Zonai people, the culture they created with other species, and their ways of life. The long dead remains of Hyrule's dragons highlights the sheer detail and depth of these games. We never even seen this Dragon Age, the time in which these gigantic dragons lived, where they prospered and roamed free, but we know what happened, and can see just how big an impact that's had on Hyrule over the years, from the strong connections to the Zonai people to the modern day influences. Hyrule's Dragon Age is extremely important to the history of this kingdom, and the remains are here as a reminder of just how different the kingdom once was. A land clearly ruled by them at some point in time, in their great numbers, and even greater size. But will we ever see a Zelda game that shows us dragons living in the wild like this great unseen Dragon Age? It's unlikely that we will to this degree, but you never know. Only time will tell. Thanks a ton for watching, folks. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm curious to know what you think of this Dragon Age lore. Are my findings and speculations accurate, or are there some things I've perhaps missed? Be sure to leave a comment, as well as a cheeky wee like down below. It'd also mean the world to me if you'd consider subscribing for more fabulous Zelda content coming your way. A massive shout out and thanks must also go to my channel supporters for helping to make these videos all the more possible. If you'd like to help make my videos all the more possible as well, then consider becoming a supporter through the links in the description. I offer a weekly inside scoop post, your name at the end of my videos, and a shout out upon joining. Speaking of which, a very special thanks goes to new supporters Zantli and Sventja. Thank you very much for becoming channel supporters. If you'd like to keep up to date with me and what I've got going on, I've linked my socials and Discord server down below as well. Drop me a follow. Thanks again for watching. I wish you a pleasant rest of your day or night, and until the next time, I've been Hyrule Gamer.